From the desert sands of Namibia to the canyon roads of Los Angeles, and everywhere in between, we trust Rockform to keep our phones safe and accessible on two wheels or beyond. Rockform's twist lock system and powerful magnets are designed for real-world motorcycle riding. No rattles, no worries. Whether you're hammering the trails or hammering out a daily commute, Rockform's mil-spec construction provides peace of mind in any situation. Get 25% off Rockform rugged cases and motorcycle mounts with promo code MOTO25. Gear up and save today.
Hey, what's up? This is Nick with Motorcycle.com, and we just got done riding something that we've all been waiting for a number of years now. Now, you guys will recognize this as the 2025 Honda NT1100, which is a true blue traditional 17-inch wheeled sport touring motorcycle. So in North America, if we look at Honda America's lineup overall, it was missing that throwback sport tour. Okay, they had the NC750X and then the Africa Twin variations, whether we're talking about the adventure sport or the off-road oriented models. But if you think about the 17-inch wheeled offerings out there, well, nothing was really there. Now our friends across the pond, they got the NT back in 22. We had to wait a little while. That bike over there went through one iteration, and we are getting that latest version of such. So it has all of the recent updates that apply to the Africa Twin platform. So we did something kind of cool. We started in Costa Mesa, California, and then rode some of my favorite roads in Southern California. That's outside Julian, California, went through Carlsbad, California, other little areas, you know, South Temecula, blah, blah, blah. And really, we just did what the average sport tour would do, is just check stuff out, eat at a couple good local haunts, and hit a lot of really fun roads. Just exactly what this bike is aimed at. Honda North America doesn't typically cite performance numbers, and you know, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but realistically most of the Japanese subsidiaries within the United States don't. But here's what we're looking at. About 100 horsepower at the crank and roughly 82 foot-pounds of torque. Now, that's not nothing. It's actually ample horsepower to push around this 547-pound motorcycle, and overall it does pretty well. Now, a lot of our audience is going to be pretty familiar with the Africa Twin engine. Honda has sold a lot of ATs over the years, and it's a very proven platform. It's very tractable, power comes in strong. It's not really going to get over your head, so if you are graduating from a middleweight motorcycle, coming back into motorcycles, I think it's something that you can definitely sink your teeth into, and it's still going to have a very respectable amount of performance. So you're going to have lots of passing power on the road, or on the freeway rather, and you're going to be able to have some fun in the canyons. It's not going to crest into that 150 horsepower range in that sort of upper echelon of kind of premium, quote unquote, high performance sport touring. What I do want to fixate on here is the fact that this is the DCT model, or DCT version of the AT engine. And that's how this bike is being presented in the United States. Now, instead of getting into the nuts and bolts of DCT, which a lot of our viewers are familiar with, you know, this is a very established technology from Honda, and it does stand for dual clutch transmission. Let's just talk about the uses. Of course, that means you have just an automatic transmission by and large. We have two separate modes. You have drive and sport, and within sport, you have three different levels of that. And then of course you also have a manual mode where you can use the paddle shifters here and shift, well, as you normally would, but instead of using a clutch lever and a shift lever down by your foot, you have these handy dandy little paddle shifters. So how does that change the riding experience? You know, with the DCT models and it's stuff in that realm, by and large, it just turns full-size motorcycles into massive high-power scooters. They're just sort of twist and go. Look, the computer is doing the shifting for you, and for the most part, it's incredibly smooth. What you will notice with DCT is just it has its own idiosyncrasies, okay? When you're in the drive mode, for example, it, for some reason, really loves being in sixth gear. So, you know, you could be cruising along at 30 miles an hour, just pulling out of the parking lot, and it just rushes into sixth gear. That's not something that I'd say a rider would typically do, but if you're just lugging along and just trying to chow down miles, it's not a bad mode to sit in. These shifting strategies can be a little bit interesting, we'll say. Now, sport mode, and in particular the sport mode's third level of that, that's something that I think is a little bit more applicable to real world riding, and really mimics what I think the average rider would do. Still, it can hang on to gears a little bit too long, or or maybe shift a bit too early, things of that nature. But realistically, it just takes a lot of effort off your plate. And for a sport touring motorcycle, I do think that's something that offers a pretty high value because, again, you can just focus on the miles, doing what you need to do, whether that's commuting, touring, sport riding, whatever you're really into. And it just takes a lot off your plate. So yeah, DCT overall, a lot of the same criticism that we could apply to other Africa Twin DCT models, Goldwing models with DCT, it still applies. Okay, so would I like to see the shifting strategies get a little better as we improve? Yes, but does it still hold value for me? Yes, also. To the chassis, in North America, unlike the European version, we get analog suspension. We have Showa suspension with preload adjustment at each end, no damping adjustment, 5.9 inches of travel. And even though I would say that this bike takes a little bit of design inspiration from that ADV Sport Tour side of things, even though this is probably a bit more traditionally Sport Tour, the suspension itself and the chassis is definitely of that sport touring ilk. It really prioritizes stability while still being a pretty fun motorcycle to ride. It's a 547-pound motorcycle without the bags. And despite all those numbers, 60 plus inch wheelbase, et cetera, this thing can still hustle pretty hard. You just kind of got to finesse it a little bit. What I would say the suspension needs is damping, and that's in terms of compression damping and rebound damping. Not to say that it's uncontrolled, it's just that it could use a little bit more support to manage that weight as it's going through rougher sections of road with undulations, things of that nature, because this bike can get upset as you're cornering, you hit some of those bigger bumps and can become unsettled. Overall, is it a balanced motorcycle? Yes, by and large. And comfort-wise, it's definitely there. But I do think some damping, extra damping would be nice, if not just adjustable damping overall. Now, the sort of quick fix that we all discovered and when we were really hustling this thing around is you just have to control the chassis a little bit more with your brakes. So trail braking, really just kind of holding that thing in the stroke with the brakes, whether you're using the front, rear, whatever. In my case, I would be using the front a little bit more. That's one strategy. But overall, handling wise, I'm pretty happy with this thing. Again, I would like some more damping. And then I do have to mention the semi-active suspension that is offered in Europe. Do I think that a customer in the sport touring category, especially motorcycle, that really underscores that touring, would they appreciate that sort of feature? Yes, absolutely. But how much would it add to the total MSRP? And that's something that Honda North America is extremely conscientious of because they're really offering this thing at a sub $12,000 price tag. So yeah, getting semi-active suspension, it's gonna jack that price up. And if they're really going for pure value, that's what they want to do. Would I like it? Yes, personally I would, if not just adjustable damping overall. Now, moving into some of the other technology stuff, we are seeing an IMU added to this, which means corner and ABS, lean angle sensitive traction control. It is not as fleshed out as, say, Honda sport bikes. It is multi-level TC that is adjustable. You can disable it as well. And corner and ABS is just as it stands. Now within that, you do have this TFT display, full color screen, and each mode, there are 3 different preset ride modes. You have urban, rain, and tour, and that really controls and corrals your power modes, so your throttle map, your engine braking mode, and your traction control mode. Then you have 2 user modes within that. Now, electronically, like I said before, you have those IMU supported rider aids. I think that's excellent value, and it's just kind of elevates the platform overall. I had no issue with ABS intervening prematurely. A couple little instances where it's like bumpy tarmac and things like that. So, take it or leave it sort of deal. One thing I will say about the electronic experience as a whole, you have this upper TFT display and then this lower LCD screen that shows your shift indicator, things like that, miles per hour. The user interface and the experience with the switchgear here is a tad overwhelming. Now, I know that's kind of a moto journalist critique, as in we're getting to terms with things as quickly as we possibly can, and owners will definitely overcome a lot of those things. That said, I think the user interface as a whole can be streamlined and can be improved. In my opinion, KTM and Aprilia have some of the best interfaces on the market just because of their accessibility and ease of use. Going into the riding position before we kind of wrap this whole thing up, you're working with a dead neutral riding position. It's comfortable for all day riding. We did a couple 100 miles over the course of this ride, rode out to Borrego Springs from Costa Mesa, did a lot of miles in the canyons. It's as you see in the video, just neutral, 32.3-ish inch seat height. The bike, a bit girthy, so you know, not too girthy, just a little bit. And then you have this large touring capable fuel tank that we will put the fuel capacity right here and some happy graphics. So realistically, you get a pretty competitive range with that very acceptable riding position. And then of course, you have your handy dandy adjustable windscreen here. And there's a huge range of adjustment. For me, I actually like it at about this 3/4-ish height. That was basically perfect for me, 5'10" tall, not too much buffeting. When it was in the full upright position, it was getting a lot of buffeting, whatever. Okay, now the bike, it doesn't come quite as you see it here, accessory bags. That's a bit disappointing for me because when I think sport touring, I think center stand, I think comfort, I think good horsepower overall and performance, and I think luggage. There's just not a situation to me where I wouldn't be purchasing this bike and expecting luggage. Now it is an accessory, it's gonna put you over that 12K mark, but it's still much cheaper than the clear majority of the competition, but that's about it. Okay, so I'm Nick with Motorcycle.com. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop them down below, and always visit Motorcycle.com for all your answers about facts, figures, and reviews of motorcycles. Now, I gotta hit the road, so I'll see you guys later.